Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening for those of you joining us here in Ghana. Good morning, good afternoon for others joining us from other time zones. It's great to be here again this evening and a privilege to lead this webinar series. My name is Dagadu, and I have the privilege of being the moderator for this evening's program. So welcome to Invest in GH webinar series. This is the 10th in a series of webinars that we had about financial literacy and other topics related to same. This evening, we have the privilege of interviewing one gentleman who has stood tall in our financial industry, especially in the area of home financing. And as we go on, we'll get to know who he is. But right now, I'm going to tell you about Invest in GH. So Invest in GH is a leading provider of financial news and education in Ghana. Our news, magazines, and recently webinars have delivered to thousands of people in Ghana and beyond. We'd like to thank all of you for your support in building this brand and joining. Indeed, the team has worked very assiduously to make sure that a lot of financial information gets to all of us. And for subscribers like myself who benefit from the daily news, we know the team is doing a great job to feed us with all of these. This, as I mentioned, is the 10th in a series of webinars. In the previous webinars, we've discussed mutual funds, stocks, real estate. More recently, there was a conversation about cryptocurrency. And in fact, there are so many other interesting topics lined up. And this evening's session is going to be one of those. In all our previous webinars, we have the videos represented or present on our YouTube channel. So for people who haven't seen those, you can just visit the Invest in GH YouTube channel and you have access to all of that information. Once again, my name is Dagadu, and I have the privilege of moderating this session. The man you are more interested in seeing and hearing from is Mr. Kojo Addo-Kufuor. Kojo is currently the executive head of home loans at First National Bank, Ghana. In 2006, he co-founded and served as the executive director at Ghana Home Loans, a mortgage specialist which went on to become the leading provider of residential mortgages in Ghana. A decade later, Ghana Home Loans obtained a universal banking license and converted to GHL Bank, and subsequently merged with First National Bank in 2020. Prior to co-founding Ghana Home Loans, Kojo was the executive director of SDC Brokerage Services, where he was instrumental in the creation of CM Fund and worked on several transactions, including the listing of Goel, a leading oil marketing company. Earlier in his career, Kojo worked in corporate finance with Citigroup in London and Lagos, where he focused on financial institutions. He also worked with KPMG Barnes management consultants in the Far East and in Australia. He holds a BSc in Agric Engineering from KNUST and an MSc in Computer Science from the University of London and an MBA from Columbia Business School, New York. Kojo is an avid radio listener and keenly follows current affairs. Indeed, that's a great profile, and I'm sure, even having heard the profile already, you are looking forward to hearing what Kojo has to offer and have a lot of questions that you would want to ask. So before I call Kojo to join in the conversation, a few ground rules I would like us to observe. As the conversation goes on, I believe you will have some questions that you'd like to ask. Please drop your questions in the chat box. This session is being streamed live on the Invest in GH YouTube channel. The name is Invest in GH, and the link is also dropped in the chat. You can visit the link to watch the video. So for people who might have connection problems on Zoom, you have a great alternative in our YouTube channel. If you have friends who are struggling to join, you can just let them know that they can join us live on YouTube and follow everything from there. If they have questions as well, you could just drop your questions as in the chat box or in the comment section on our YouTube channel, and we'll be glad to read these questions. Kojo, if you are on, I would appreciate it if you can unmute and turn on your video so we see you.
Hi, good
Yeah, hi, Kojo.
afternoon. Hi, how are you, Prince?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you doing too?
Very well, thanks. Very well.
Awesome,
I
good.
hope the sound quality is okay.
Yes, it's great. We can hear you clearly. For our participants, if it's great, you can just drop a thumbs up in the chat so we are sure you can also hear it. I can hear you clearly from my end, and I see the thumbs going up, so I believe it's great everywhere.
Excellent.
Once again,
Thanks.
Kojo, great to have you on.
No, real pleasure, and
Yes,
thanks for the
yes.
invite.
Yes. So, in today's conversation, I understand you're going to give us a short presentation telling us about yourself, about your career, maybe some things that most people don't know about you, a little of the fun side as well. And then we'll have a lot of questions that we'll be asking after your presentation. So, you can proceed if you don't mind.
Well, thanks. What I'll do is I'll first share my screen so that I get my presentation up.
Okay.
Please let me know if you can see it.
Yes, very clear.
Okay, perfect. Are we good?
Yeah, we are good. So I'll mute and then go off for now, watch your presentation, and then come back with questions.
Okay, perfect. Well, once again, thanks a lot for the invitation. I really feel honored to be invited to this forum. It's my first time here, and I'd like to express my gratitude to Ellie and Eric and the two princes for inviting me. I also want to congratulate you for building such a wonderful platform. Well done. So the arrangement is to have two sessions. Part one, that's today, is about my journey all the way through Ghana home loans and to date. And the second part, which I believe is at some point in March, we'll look at home ownership and hopefully address some of the facts and myths and all the things people say about the home loans product and how it's used, et cetera, et cetera. So this is part one. So, but back to today, the task is to compress about 5 decades of my life into 30 minutes, making sure I don't miss out any of the fun bits, as you said. I humbly accept the task. So with your permission, I'll begin. So my early life was a journey through several schools. I actually counted about 7 primary schools before finally ending up at City of Kumasi Preparatory School in Kumasi, where I wrote my common entrance and entered Prempeh College in '79. Studied science at Prempeh and went on to School of Engineering at UST, graduated class of '91, and then went on, as you said, to do a master's at Birkbeck College, University of London, and then went on to business school in New York, Columbia. But maybe I should take a couple of steps back and explain some of these movements. So studying science and engineering were kind of natural choices because I realized I could count better than I could write. So the science subjects were relatively easier. But the reality is that coming out of undergrad, I really didn't have a clear, detailed plan as to what I was really going to do with my life. I knew I'd head out somewhere, possibly London. I knew I'd do something for a while and then head back home. That the beginning and end were pretty okay, but the bits in between I hadn't really thought through in much detail. But when I got to London, looked around, saw what people were doing, what they were earning, and then eventually heard about what the people in the City of London, the financial services industry, were also doing. They're living the big life. You know, my vision cleared up immediately. And I saw their fancy offices, the insane salaries they were earning, and I just decided that's where I belonged. I thought that's really the place for me. So from then onwards, just like the great Martin Luther King, I had a dream. The dream was to get into investment banking. In fact, it was more than a dream. It actually became a bit of an obsession. And the plan was to get some experience, head off to business school, reinvent myself, and then to come get that dream job and then move on. So that's how I ended up at business school. coming out of business school, my first job was with a consultancy firm called KPMG Barron's. So it's like emerging markets wing of KPMG. They had a dedicated team that focused on emerging markets consulting. So I was promptly shipped off to Melbourne, Australia, and then to DC, then into Indonesia, then to Ecuador, then back to Indonesia. You know, it was fun, I can't lie, and I learned a lot. I had an amazing boss who taught me some really good skills. So I had fun, and I also really enjoyed the life, you know, a lot of fancy hotels and restaurants and flying around business class. But the traveling quickly got to me, and the disruption to social life, and you know, and besides everything else, that was not the dream. The dream still remained getting that job in investment banking. So after a lot of sweat and tears and prayers, I finally I landed the job with Schroeder Salomon Smith Barney, which is the investment banking wing of Citigroup. So I joined the FIG team in London. FIG is the Financial Institutions Group. So that's the group within the bank that advises other banks. And for me, that was kind of the dream. As far as I was concerned, I had arrived. But within a few weeks and months, I realized actually that wasn't what I really wanted to do. One, because the pressure, you know, the sheer hours, you know, it was a good day when I left the office before 10, 11 p.m. You're always there till midnight, 1 a.m. Anybody on this call who's been through that knows what I'm talking about. You know, the stress, the office politics, all of that. I quickly realized I'll do this for a while, but really, it wasn't all it had been cracked up to be. So I did it for a while, but things started getting a bit interesting when a very good friend and mentor of mine, who was on the Citibank side of the business, informed me that he was being moved to Nigeria. He was going to run the Citibank business there. And for me, that was one step closer to home and part of the big picture. So it was an excellent opportunity. Initially, I wasn't too hot on kind of going to Lagos. Everything I'd heard about the place wasn't terribly pleasant. So after a bit of thinking, I gradually accepted the position and moved from London to Lagos. And the whole idea was that it was one step closer to Accra. So that's how I ended up in Lagos. It turned out to be an excellent move. I call Lagos the New York of Africa. I mean, the energy there, the sheer, I mean, people know a bit more about the place now than before, but I'm talking early 2000s, you know, there was only one flight out of Lagos to Accra a week or something. It was really bad. But you met some really interesting people doing amazing things, and I got a lot of inspiration from my move there. Now, my elder brother, who had qualified as a chartered accountant with Pricewaterhouse in London, had moved back to Accra and joined Ashanti. Now, when I was going to Lagos, he told me that, well, if you are going to Lagos, you got to look up this, my friend who was also at Ashanti, but now moved to Lagos. He's called Dominic. So when I got out to Lagos, I reached out to Dom, and so that's how I met him. And he mentioned, well, we spent a lot of time together. I mean, as these things happen, a lot of time spent, you know, having drinks and discussing what we would do. And we quickly realized we had something in common. We both wanted to do something special in Ghana. He introduced me to Ellis, who at the time was running HFC's mortgage business here in Accra. So the three of us quickly concluded that looking where Ghana was as a middle-income country, the fact that home ownership was very topical and an integral part of what a middle-income country is, we realized that if we're going to do anything, home ownership has to be part of it. So we decided to set up a company called Ghana Home Loans, and it was modeled on a similar business in SA called SA Home Loans. So the name was quite easy to come by. And the idea was just to make home ownership a reality for as many Ghanaians as possible. But to do this, we needed several ingredients were required. We needed to develop a business plan. That was quite easy. We just sat down and kind of started with a blank sheet of paper and passed it around. And we write a chapter at a time, share ideas, and keep working on it. So we kind of pulled that off. Then we needed shareholders. Now, in terms of shareholders, what we did was we looked at the same people who had invested in South Africa home loans, SA home loans, and realized that if they understood that business, they would understand what we were trying to do. So we had sessions with FMO, that's a Dutch DFI, IFC, and Standard Bank, the parent company of Stanbic, and they had all invested in SA home loans. So we figured they would understand the business plan we were putting in front of them. And then there was a group called Broadcove Partners. They were our financial advisors who also became shareholders. We then made a special trip to go see one of the co-founders of SA Home Loans, a gentleman by the name of Simon Stockley. It was almost like a pilgrimage to go get some inspiration and understand what we needed to do. And it was quite encouraging, and he actually promised us that if we ever made it, we should give him a call. So when we did make it, we called him up, and he came on board as chairman of the company for a period of about 6 years. I'm always amazed that he actually entertained the idea, because I never got to ask him what he thought of us when we first presented the idea. He probably thought we weren't serious people, but I mean, in the end, we got there, and he came on board, as well as we had board representation from the other shareholders. So with that, we were in a very good place. The last piece of the jigsaw was long-term funding. Without long-term funding, you don't have a mortgage business. And one call led to another, and we arrived at OPIC. OPIC is Overseas Private Investment Corporation of the US, an arm of the US government that kind of does investments and financing around the world. And they spent a fair bit of time with us, understanding what we were trying to do. And in the end, we got a line of credit from them, and that got us going. Obviously, we needed regulatory approval as well, so we had to go see BOG. And again, all of this, I cannot emphasize enough how new it was, because really nobody had quite done this. There was no privately owned operating mortgage business. So everybody kind of scratched their heads and wondered, well, isn't this something the government does? But BOG was quite very accommodating. We had great guys who worked with us, who understood the business plan. They came back several times with questions. But in the end, we got the license we needed to set up the business. We were kindly offered some office space at the Regimano head office opposite Labadi Beach Hotel by the sea. And that's where we started, in a very small office. The three of us, later became 4, later became 5, and it grew from there onwards. It's fair to say that Ghana Home Loans reintroduced the mortgage product to the local market in a new and a very exciting way. And I say reintroduced because, to be fair, HFC had been there before us. But when we came on the market, most people weren't terribly interested in the product, and we had to almost start from scratch. We identified several challenges which we had to surmount. But before I get to the challenges, I want to talk about some of the things we did. So, for example, we realized that the product innovation and market education were key. So we had to drive, well, first, drive innovation by way of market education. So we did things like road shows, housing fairs, developer seminars, corporate presentations, as much interaction as possible to dissuade people from some of the things they had heard about the product. We put together a borrower education video, and all of this was kind of on the P&L. It was expense, money that we're just spending to get people to understand what the product was about before they even signed up. We developed a borrower education video which explained what the product does. We decided that we had to educate the next generation, so we set up real estate clubs on the various campuses, starting from Legon. The funding, I spoke about the OPIC line of credit, the 30 million. After OPIC, we went to several other lenders with that same template and raised a lot of funding from, IFC, FMO, Proparco. Again, these are DFIs who were looking at us and looking at what we had done and giving a lot of money in any way you choose to look at it to do what we're doing. Having done that, we decided to expand our funding a bit. We went to the capital markets to issue mortgage-backed notes on the local exchanges. It was a $100 million facility, which was launched in 2016. So, sorry, can you still hear me? I think the connectivity is gone a bit.
Yeah, we can hear you clearly, Kojo.
Yeah, okay. So we did mortgage-backed notes. We did commercial financing of the facilities using medium-term structure. So we did all kinds of innovations to get funding to write business. As I said earlier, without long-term funding, you don't have a mortgage business. Some of these structures can be the topic of a whole presentation in terms of what we did. And then more importantly, we created a whole, what I call mortgage specialists, the whole team of employees, some of whom came to us straight from university, but within a few matter of months and years had become very experienced in the product and could easily hold their own in front of any audience. And some of them are still with us after all these years. Others have moved on to other parts of the industry and are doing amazing things. So we really did contribute a lot to drive the product and the industry at large. As far as challenges are concerned, the key ones, I mean, we had quite a few, but the key ones I would list as: one, supply. So the way it works is every year you look out 12 months and decide how much business you are going to do in terms of loans. And given that most of these loans were written to fund the houses that were being developed, you needed to know what the developers were building. The problem is supply wasn't always regular. A developer will tell you, I'm building 100 houses. In actual fact, they build 15. They had their own financing issues. So we needed to fix that, because without them rolling out the units as scheduled, we didn't have any loans to write. What we did in order to address that was to introduce funding to some of the key developers. We brought our partners on board. We worked with them to address some of the reasons why they couldn't get funding. Some of them, through that, have transformed their business in a very meaningful sense. Others, too, kind of are still operating at levels where they are happy to be operating at. But supply was and still remains a key constraint to the business. The other challenge was the legal system, the time taken for foreclosures to go through. Someone takes a facility, they can't service the loan. You need to go to court to get the house back and sell to get your money out, and you could be in there for weeks, months, years. And what that means is that kind of impacts your capital, because the money that you put into the business is tied up in some case which is going on forever and ever. And other matters that needed legal resolution, and some of these end up in court, and you could literally be there for years. And then title verification and transfer. The fact that, before you write every loan, you need to check out the title to know who owns that house. And once you've written the loan, you need to transfer title from the previous owner to the current owner. It was a problem in the beginning. It's always been a problem, and it remains a problem. We've done a lot to help fix that. We've worked very closely with the Lands Commission guys, who extremely cooperate with us. We've collaborated with them. We've supported them. So it's a lot better now than it was in the beginning. In fact, in the beginning, people always cited this as the reason why the business would never work. Everybody said, well, Ghana, you have a title problem, therefore you can't do mortgages. But we demonstrated that actually title problems notwithstanding, you could do the business. So these are some of the challenges we identified. Then there are others like fraud and all the other bits, which are almost like the bread and butter of every business. So that's how it was until 2014. By that time, it's fair to say we were the undisputed leaders as far as the market was concerned, in terms of size or volume of transactions or any measure you care to use. And then in early 2014, for those of you who can remember, BOG came up with some restrictions in USD trading. So what they said was you can't have dollar accounts, you can't dollars, and it was kind of a blanket directive. Two things happened. One was we went over to see them to explain why we had to do our business in dollars. And the reason we gave was simple. What we said was, you either fund this thing in cedis or you fund it in dollars. At the moment, there's no cedi funding. So unless they are saying we should, we have to do it the way we're doing it. And we also explained that the dollar funding it's not the cheapest, but it's relatively cheaper than cedis, especially given where cedi rates were at the time. So after a series of discussions, we got a waiver to continue on, on our way to do what we were doing before. So that was a relief. But that also triggered the second one, which is it got us thinking that if a one-time directive like that can grind us to a halt, which is what that directive did, then we need to diversify our revenue and business model. Because up until then, we just had one product in various forms, but still one product. So we had a series of strategic sessions. We brought in advisors at the shareholder level. There's a lot of deep thinking to say, what do we do? I mean, how do we make sure this never happens to us again? We went into several meetings, and then the net effect of all of that was a decision to transition into banking, because then we had both a cedi business and a dollar business and a diversified source of revenue. The strategy was to remain focused on real estate, have a limited branch presence, and offer our clients a full range of banking products. But as I said, the focus will still be on real estate, construction finance, home loans. Our DNA would still remain the focus of the business. So we did that and got the license to launch in 2017. So Ghana Home Loans then became GHL Bank. Then BOG came back again and changed the capital requirements from 120 to 400. So again, shareholders got in the room and had to take another decision, which is, well, what do we do now? We have a business plan which works perfectly at 120, does it work at 400? And the decision was, well, maybe not. Let's consider other options. So we went back to a conversation which had been in the background for a while, which is one which we had with the guys over at First National. And actually, it looked like very compelling. So we got into a series of conversations, which culminated in the announcement that came out in mid-2020 that GHL had merged with First National Bank. Now, for those who don't know First National Bank, it's part of First Rand Group, which is undoubtedly one of the largest institutions in the world and in Africa, definitely the largest as far as market cap. And the merger created 11 branch bank across Ghana, Kumasi, Takoradi, Tema, and we're able to leverage the whole platform, leverage everything that the group has, funding sources, expertise, track record, relationships, technology, everything that as an early stage bank, GHL didn't have. So, but having said that, home loans in Ghana remains a very key part of the offering that the merged entity is proud to provide the financial services sector. So in a nutshell, that's how we kind of went through that whole journey to today. So at this stage, I think I'll pause for questions and hear what the members of this forum really want to know about my journey. Thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you very much, Kojo. I mean, I know, I mean, just listening to your story, I know we can drill back on various aspects of that and get as much juice as we can from it. And actually, it's what I seek to do now. Because, yes, given the limited time, you had to go over a number of things: school, MBA, consulting, investment banking, GHL, and then merger into First National Bank. So, as my first question, and this is going to be an octopus of a question. So, this is what we are going to do. I would like you to look at the various aspects. So there was Kojo 1.0, Kojo 2.0, and so on, which was school, MBA, consulting, investment banking, Ghana home loans, and then your merger into First National Bank. I want you to touch on the key lessons you took from the various aspects of your life, right? So let's begin with the early school. We'll go into your MBA. We'll go into the consulting business. So just pick one thing. That was the key thing you took from that part of your life that you think young people on this webinar can learn from.
Wow, this is really an octopus. So school, so school days. Now, I'm very reluctant to give advice because my years are definitely different from anybody who's currently going through the process now. But I think one thing that remains true now as it was then is the power of networking.
Okay.
Networking. In other words, keeping a diary of everybody you've met, where you met them, how you met them. I'll give you a story. I kind of glanced over a story about a friend and mentor who offered me the job in Lagos. When I got to London, I used, back then when you were applying for jobs, this is before computers, right? So you used to write a handwritten letter to the company saying you want them to send you their employment brochure. So you write to them, they send you the brochure, you fill the brochure, you post it to them, and then they write back saying whether you are being invited for an interview or not. And I must have had 200 of these things, the rejections. Wow. I mean, I write to them, they write back, I write to them, right? But what they always did was they'll send you their graduate recruitment brochure, right? And so, and the graduate recruitment brochure told you about the company, what they did, and it shows you profiles of recent people they had hired. And back then, you flipped through all these brochures and all the faces were white, right? Okay. Occasionally you see some Asian, occasionally you see a black. So, but I actually saw this guy and he worked for a bank called Midland Montague. That was the investment banking arm of Midland Bank. And it was called Dilly. And I thought, wow, how did this guy get there? So I actually knew his profile back to front. So you can imagine my surprise. And I hadn't seen him or I'd never met him. Again, this is before social media and LinkedIn, so you couldn't even Google him. There was no way to find a person through that channel. So I'm sitting there on the floor somewhere in Salomon Brothers, and Dele walks across the floor. And I said, "You are Dele, right?" And he says, "Yes, do I know you?" And I said, "No, you don't, but I know you." And I gave him his whole profile. He almost fell off his chair. Anyway, wow. We became very good friends. And through that, several opportunities came out of it. And it's a long story, but the point is, in terms of keeping a network of friends and people you've met along the way, you always find that these are the same relationships you go back to over and over again. I'm always surprised when you meet someone who's going through university, you give them your card or you give them your contacts, and you think every so often they'll check in, seeking advice or something. You never hear from them again. Occasionally, when they need a job, they'll call you. But I think keeping a network, right, of people you've met along the way and making sure that you constantly check in with them is the advice I'd give for those coming through school. People who've been through the process, are halfway through their career or well into their career, you need guidance from. Make sure that you know where they are and check in with them from time to time so that you don't repeat the mistakes they've made. As far as the consulting years are concerned, the lesson I took from that was well, okay, so maybe I should describe that job a bit. Essentially, you would be sent to client sites, and you often show up at a meeting, and you wouldn't even know who you're going to meet, given the type of meeting. And because you are the consultant, they expect you to be the font of all knowledge. After all, you're being paid to give advice, right? And the lesson I learned was preparation, in terms of being prepared before meetings and making sure that at least either you've got the facts right, or you can very clearly and politely explain what you know, what you don't know, and disengage and say, listen, I'll come back to you on the others. That's a skill. I know it sounds very simple, but that's a skill that has worked for me very well in terms of preparing for meetings, or even if you're not prepared, very, very quickly being able to assess where the conversation is going, contribute and disengage and say, listen, let me come back to you on the following. Because I think as a consultant, credibility is very important. As far as technical skills are concerned, I learned, as I said, a lot. I had a very great direct boss I worked with, a very senior consultant who really held my hand and took me through that a lot of analytical tools, and explained. In fact, some of the stuff I currently use when I'm working with my colleagues, it's stuff I learned kind of from him. In terms of I'll probably fast forward to the GHL years.
Okay.
Lessons learned. Oh, I mean, we learned so many lessons. I mean, the first lesson from that period was never take no for an answer. I mean, normally, the number of times people saw the business plan and said, very interesting, but guys, this thing doesn't work. It can't work. And these were even people in the financial services sector, from banks that later on went on to offer the product themselves. Whenever someone says no, ask why. And if they can't give you an intelligent reason why, that's your cue to push on and prove them wrong. I mean, in terms of working around obstacles, I could spend the whole day telling about things which on the face of it seemed impossible. But once you engaged, you realize, actually, it's not impossible. It's just either difficult or nobody's asked the right questions. We were told that, it's impossible to, transfer title, to register title, to foreclose on property. Yes, there are bottlenecks, there are difficult processes, but when you engage the people who are paid to do it and ask them why it takes so long, and they explain to you, you realize all you need is maybe a bit of resources or maybe a bit of further engagement, and you get to understand why it works the way it does. And in our case, in several instances, we're able to find solutions to some of what seemed impossible problems. So never taking no for an answer. That became almost our mantra. Once someone says this can't be done, that was our cue to set out a plan to get it done.
All right. I think so. Now let's segue into your merger with FNB. The lessons so far.
Well, I think it's still very early days. Mergers are mergers. Anybody who's been through one knows how it goes. It's normally, there are several aspects to it. Different people feel it differently depending on which floor you sit on. But as long as the reasons that got you into the merger are still compelling, as long as they're still valid, eventually, it's almost a bit like marriage, right? Ask anybody who's married, they'll tell you it's never easy. There are good days, there are bad days, but it's an institution for a reason. And as long as you keep focused on that, things work out in the long term. Yeah, that's what I can say. As I said, it's still early days. We haven't even done the full year. So let's have a conversation in 5 years, and I'll probably give you the history on that one. But the very compelling reasons which trigger that, and they still hold. Yeah.
Okay. The quick feedback before I go through the lessons I've learned from your submissions so far. I think I'm receiving some feedback about your video. I don't know whether you can check that. We can't see your image.
You want to see me, right? Okay, can you see me now?
Yes. I think something was covering the camera initially. All right, that's fine. All right. So a quick follow up to your bit about FNB. So there's a question from Mr. Albert Kusi. He wants to know. So do you think the merger was the best decision, and how does it maintain your leverage and strategy as the best mortgage bank? I was thinking about same too. Has the merger watered down your brand as the foremost guy as when it comes to mortgage financing?
I wish we could have this conversation next week for a reason I can't get into now. But
Okay.
I think what happens when mergers take place is things go a bit quiet for a while because a lot of work is happening in the background. I mean, it's impossible to tell you how much time we spend in meetings trying to make sure everything is working. You know, these are two decent sized organizations coming together, and there are so many different streams to a merger, you know, HR, IT, operations, business. So for a while, it seems and feels as if nothing is happening, and then things kick off. So I know the subtext of the question is, why have you guys gone quiet? And I think let's have this conversation next week. But I mean, but your earlier question was that the good decision? I think absolutely. I think as I said, you know, at the point in time you're faced with several options, and you have to do pros and cons on each of them. A lot of thought went into it. I can assure you the decision wasn't taken lightly. We had several options, but when we weighed everything, this was the best decision for all concerned, and we still stand by that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I have loads of questions from our participants. Thumbs up to you. You guys are doing great. I see all the questions coming through, and I'll be asking shortly. But before doing that, I want to just summarize the lessons I've taken from my first question, the octopus, right? So The first is to make sure you build networks, which is very key. Build networks, and you made reference to how you got your job and how you were linked to other people. You also talked about credibility. Credibility is key. You mentioned that in from your consulting business. You also talked about your technical skills, which are required, which you need to build to be able to excel in our careers. Yes, you talked about building networks again, which is something you've benefited from. And talking about building networks, you know, you talked about business cards. There's actually someone on this call right now who's building a tech solution for business cards and networking. It's called Business Card. It's called My Card, rather. Card is spelled CRD. They'll be launching in a bit. So, well, Philip, that's some free ad for you. I'm sure Kojo will be one of those to support. You never know, maybe you have an investor on this call. So yes, that's also the power of networking and being on wonderful webinars like investingh. Another thing I learned from your lessons, to be strategic. This is strategic alliances like your merger with FNB. So these are some things I've learned, and I'm sure our listeners have also learned a number of things, or our participants. Sorry, I thought I was on radio. Our participants have learned a few things that I'm sure they can share with us. The other question, so the first, another one, how difficult was it raising funding for your business? You've touched on that, but another thing I would like to add to this question from EA is, how did your initial career, as in your working life, influence your ability to raise funds? Because as young people, you know, there are people thinking about becoming entrepreneurs straight from school, while there are others who would want to, you know, work for a while before coming. From what you say, it looks like your experience in consulting and investment banking, something that has made you confident enough to approach people and, to put it plainly, ask them for money, have been beneficial in your entrepreneurial life. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's a fantastic observation and question. I mean, without a doubt, having a bit of work experience, demonstrating an understanding of the industry you are getting into, and being able to confidently explain why someone should part with their money helps in fundraising. The other one is when they see that you are willing to quit a decent job to start the business. I think that's also a very good signal. And I think, to be fair, in all modesty, the three of us were all leaving pretty decent careers to go do this thing full time. So we had a lot to lose. if it didn't work. But if somebody asks you to invest in their restaurant and they can't tell you anything or point to anything in their background which shows they run a restaurant before, they can cook, it's a completely greenfield, some brainwave they just had. As an investor, you'll be a bit concerned. I mean, you got to understand this is equity investment, right? Which means when it goes in, it doesn't come out unless there's some liquidity event further down the road. So you really need to be able to demonstrate that you know what you're talking about. You are putting your neck on the line. And don't forget, we put money in ourselves. I know I haven't mentioned that. We invested in ourselves. So we're putting our money where our mouth is. So you put in money yourself.
Do you mind me asking how much you guys put in it?
Let's say a lot of money at the time.
A lot of money.
And,
all right.
Yeah, I mean, we had to, because and that was the point. They wanted to be sure you had, the expression is skin in the game. If you come to me, the gentleman or lady who's doing my card, if the total investment is 100,000 and they want me to put in 100,000, my question is, well, what do you put in, right? So so you need to be able to demonstrate that you are putting in time, you're putting in money. There is such a thing as sweat equity. The work you've done in putting the idea together, the concept, the business plan, you get a bit of credit for that. But it's absolutely credible to demonstrate that you can run the business, or at least get a team that can run it. So yes, I mean that's so our area careers did help, and I mentioned. So if you take it individually, I mean, Dominic's background was in private equity, very experienced in that area. It's a bit of he's an institution in his own right. Ellis came at it. I said he was running the mortgage business in HFC, so he understood the business. And I came from the banking background, and I'd done, as I said, work in the financial institutions group within banking, and there you spend a fair bit of time looking at other banks and financial institutions. So what are called building societies in the UK. I'd written a whole report on building societies and their funding. So we knew a bit about what we're trying to do, and as I said, Ellis had practically written the book on this thing. So that was convincing. But if you're able to demonstrate that, most investors get comfortable.
Okay. So I mean, there's this question from Francis that goes to the heart of what you do. Is that the mortgage industry is undoubtedly intertwined with the building construction industry. In Ghana, there is no regulator that regulates building contractors and real estate developers. This means the building and real estate sectors are largely informal. Do you think this is a major challenge to the development of the mortgage industry? Thumbs up for that question, Francis. Could you?
Yeah, no, thanks. Another wonderful question. We'll get into that in part 2 when that is scheduled. But it's again a very it's a wonderful observation. I mean, most of what we see around us, the handiwork of estate developers, is just, I guess, blood, toil, and sweat of essentially entrepreneurs. I mean, they're not regulated. Anybody who has the courage, and I say courage because it is very tough work, acquiring land and building, especially if you're doing it on scale. If you're building a couple of semi-detached units, that's one kind of business. Once you go past 100, 200, trust me, it's not easy. And so what we call the real estate industry is an aggregation of all these efforts. Ideally should be regulated in terms of what they can and cannot do, so we have some kind of ombudsman you can take your complaints to if your building starts falling apart when you move in. All of that. I mean, at the moment, we're missing a lot of that. It impacts our business in some way because we find ourselves being drawn into some of these conversations. You finance a house and then later the buyer tells you, well, the roof is falling apart. I don't want to service the mortgage because the developer is not treating me right. And you wish there was a place you could take them to address some of these issues. We are growing. We're a growing country. With time, the right kind of entity will arise that will handle some of these things. But until then, a lot of such instances are just kind of managed in the Ghanaian way. Sit around the table and try and kind of trash it out. Some of them end up in court for legal resolution. But the impact on us is that it means as I said earlier, it impacts supply because people don't often look to the developers when they think in terms of home ownership. The natural reaction, in most places in the world, when you come out of school and you decide you want to buy a house, you think of mortgage, you think of a house that's already there, you just buy, you move in. Ghana, people think in terms of acquiring land and building because they don't want to deal with any of this, right? They think, well, why go buy some developer's house? It's too small, poorly built. If I have any issues, they won't help me out. Let me go build my own thing. And in the let me go build my own thing state of mind, mortgages don't normally feature, even though we have a mortgage for that. People just tend to build their own space using their own resources. So that's impacting our business, definitely. That was the supply comment I alluded to earlier on.
Okay, so another question which is similar to the initial one from Francis. This one is from Vincent. He says, thanks for the education. His question is, there's been an argument to the effect that the dollarization of mortgage facilities in Ghana has immensely contributed to the culture of pricing real estate in dollars in Ghana, which has undoubtedly and unnecessarily inflated property prices. What's your take on the issue? Given his choice of words, you can tell he's very passionate about this dollarization issue.
That's one. Yeah, no, the fair point. I mean, that's, again, another fair observation. I think, I don't think the observation is fair. I don't think the conclusion is fair. So it's fair to say that the mortgage business is dollarized, and I gave reasons for that earlier on. We didn't start the fire. Houses have been priced. Houses have been priced in dollars before we even came on the scene. The reality is that when the cedi versus dollar is stable, pricing naturally gravitates to cedis. People are happy to say this house is 220,000 cedis, and we've seen that. There was a period when the developers, nobody asked them to, they used to price in cedis. But maybe I should take a step back. The couple of reasons that I need to be very clear about. First off, I did say in the presentation that we didn't choose to price in dollars. But when we went looking for long-term funding, and remember, without long-term funding, you don't have a business. There was no long-term funding in cedis. Even now, you struggle to get long-term funding in cedis. OPIC, I mentioned, gave us a 15-year facility. At the time, even Ghana government wasn't lending out, borrowing 15 years, right? They subsequently came back and did a 20-year facility, 20-year loan. Right. So that's the kind of money you just don't get in cedis. And that's the kind of money you need to ride this business. Therefore, because you're borrowing in cedis, you're lending in cedis. So the inability to get long-term funding in cedis is one. Secondly, when you get long-term funding in cedis, it tends to be quite expensive. Check your rates on Monday morning. CD rates past 1 year are into the teens, almost 19-20%. And that's for government, which means if you are borrowing, you pay 25, 26, whereas the dollar one is around 12, 13. So it's almost half. So CD rates are higher and more difficult to get hold of. That's one. Secondly, the way developers work, and this is me holding brief for developers. The way developers work, they build a house, and the construction of the house can take 6 months, 9 months from start to finish, right? When you offer to buy the house, they have to give you a price which makes sense for the entire duration of the construction period. Let's say they tell you the house is worth 100,000 cedis today, and 2 months later into the construction period, the cedi devalues. All of a sudden, the 100,000 they quoted is no longer 100,000 cedis. It's worth less in dollars. And remember, a lot of what they used to build the houses are imported, right? The cement is linked to the dollar, iron, everything's linked to the dollar. So they need to hedge themselves. That's the word. They need to hedge themselves against movement in currency during the construction period.
A quick interjection there. But in cases where it's the opposite, where maybe the rates are better, we don't see them suddenly drop their prices because of that. Wouldn't you say they are doing it in their own favor at the end of the day?
So you're saying that what happens if the cedi appreciates against the dollar?
Yes, yes.
I can't remember the number of times that has
I think
happened.
they'll still stick. And now I'm holding brief for home buyers, right? I think
Yes.
I think these guys also just stick to whatever price they were at, in spite of the change in the fortunes of the cedi, to their own benefit.
No, I take the point. I think it's also fair to say that if you go back, well, as far back as we can choose to go, the cedi has never really appreciated against the dollar in any meaningful sense, not in a sustained way anyway.
Okay.
There might be a bit of a rally, but when you draw a long-term graph, it's always one way. When we started, it was 0.97 to the dollar. We saw it go to 1, we saw it go to 2, we saw it go to 3, 4, 5, now it's 6, right? Occasionally it pulls back a bit, but the graph is one way. It's a steady depreciation, and nobody really bets on it going the other way. So that's the state of mind in which they are when they are pricing the houses. And I kind of sympathize with them, because I know some of them who have lost their businesses because they priced in cities. By the time people finished paying for the houses, it was worth 70% of the original price. Now, how much margin do they make on these things that they should get 70% of the asking price? So I mean, it's a systemic problem, and they're just doing their best to deal with it.
Okay, so I mean, I'm excited to see some very technical questions on maybe because of my own background as an investment professional. Some of these things excite me. I see this question from Victor. So Victor says, how well, now that's interesting. I think this is the Victor I know, because this question is peculiar. He says, how did the liquidation of Abraj affect your banking transition?
Oh, right. Right. So this gets into
just an efficient address. Let's try to do this without getting too technical, because we have a diverse audience.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard for me to give a short answer.
Yeah.
And without boring the audience with details. Let's just say, so Abraj was one of the shareholders at the time we're taking the decision to transition.
Shareholders of what?
Sorry, of GHL Bank.
Okay.
Yeah, and they had their own kind of internal difficulties, which, I mean, again, without getting into details, it was a factor, but not the factor, because it is a chain reaction. So you have a group of shareholders, one gets into trouble, and that chain reaction triggers a set of decisions. What I can say is that the reason went even beyond the Abraj conversation that Victor is alluding to.
Yeah. All right. I'm sure Victor will have follow-ups, but not today. Okay. Yes. So there's this question from Francis. Says, what do you say to those who are advocating that the tier 2 pension funds in Ghana should be used to finance the mortgage industry like the US mortgage industry does?
I've heard that conversation, and usually when they say that, what they mean is the tier 2 pension funds. Well, I think tier 2 pension funds should be used to provide a cheaper source of funding. Normally, that's the hidden word. The assumption is that if the tier 2 money comes in, it should be at such a rate that the mortgages become more affordable. I can tell you, as someone who used to chair a pension board of trustees, that the pressure on the fund managers is in the other direction. In other words,
when I was going to say that,
when the fund managers are given their money, they expect they're expected to deliver T-bill plus returns.
They are chasing alpha.
Exactly, and so it's going to be very difficult to ask them to give money to pension finance houses at below T-bill rates. And the question is, who takes the loss? Because don't forget, it's your pension we're talking about here. So it sounds like a good idea, but I don't know how workable it is. The US market is different. The US market is way sophisticated, and even they get themselves into trouble from time to time. So I don't know if we want to go down that route.
Yeah. Okay. So just along the lines of funding. So you talked about getting into the Ghanaian markets. I mean, in these days where the yields on government bonds are dropping, what don't you think is a good time to, say, consider the corporate bond market?
You mean to fund mortgages?
Yes. Or even to fund your business, or maybe after the merger, this is not something you would need.
Well, post-merger, the funding is done centrally. Again, I talked about the compelling nature of the transaction. I mean, you have a huge platform taking care of funding, so it's no longer a local headache, if you like. We have a whole massive institution in SA we can fall back on to talk about matters funding related. But before the merger, I mean, we did tap into the local, what you refer to as corporate bond market. That's the medium-term note I referred to. We did a $100 million note program listed on the stock exchange. And the whole idea was that from time to time would tap into that to raise funding. Again, same conversation we just had. Everybody knows that the money we are asking for is going to be used to write mortgages, but everybody wants top return. Nobody says, oh, you're going to write mortgages, so give me 2%. Everybody still wants their 8, 9, 10% in dollars. And secondly, tenor. We struggled to go past 5 years, even for the pension funds. Everybody wanted 3 to 5 year tenor. Nobody wanted to be exposed to you for 10, 15 years. It's a very long time in Ghana financing. So that's why a lot of the funding comes from outside, and that's why a lot of the funding is dollar denominated.
Okay. All right. So to other sides of this conversation, I mean, I knew this question was going to come one way or the other, and just in case nobody asked, I'll ask at the end. But Muta beats me to it. So I think you already know what the question is going to be. So it comes with your surname, right? And
yes, so, I can go to guess that one.
Yes.
I don't know which form it is, so please go ahead.
So he is asking, what was the impact of your surname in your career and business? So I'm not asking it in his exact words, but this is the import of the question.
Yeah. Again, let's just say that when I left in '91, my surname didn't mean anything to most people, except my dear family members. And even at the time, I came back. So I came back in 2004, by which time, yes, people used to kind of draw the association. But I think at that time, in terms of career, I pretty much, I had my kind of track record to demonstrate what I could do. Yeah, but I mean, listen, I can't pretend I don't have the surname. I do have the surname, and I think I take the advantages and disadvantages of it as they come. Yeah.
Do you want to expand on the advantages and disadvantages?
Well, I mean, I think the advantages, some people see you and they have preconceived notions of who you are or where you've come from, and others too don't. And I think for me, I don't even make it an issue. I just go about my business and let people form their own kind of opinions, and hopefully once they've interacted with me, that opinion is a favorable one. Yeah. So
at the end of the day, the substance speaks for itself.
Well, I hope it does. Yes. As I said, by the time I returned in 2004, my brother even came way before. He came in '97, and my sister, by the way, she also came back in '97, '98. So and as I said at the time, I know the question, the subtext of the question is because of my uncle and everything, but he wasn't even in power at the time. But I mean, the point is, people tend to deal with you on your own terms, no matter where they start from. Eventually, once they've interacted with you, if they are being rational, they tend to form their own opinion of you. And if they are being irrational, then there's very little you can do to help them.
Okay. All right. So he has another question, which is also more directed associated with your career. So he is currently head of finance with one finance house in Ghana and is looking to expand into an international career. Do you have any tips on how he can get into some of the international jobs? Maybe Citibank.
Yeah, I think he has very good chances now. I mean, I'm amazed where Ghanaians find themselves these days. Ghana is definitely on the map. And he shouldn't. I don't know exactly where he's looking or how he's looking, but he shouldn't be dissuaded if the first 2 or 3 responses are negatives. He has a very good chance of landing a very decent opportunity anywhere because of what Ghanaians have done over the past couple of decades. I can assure you, when I was coming out of school, we used to go for interviews and you mentioned Ghana, and they'd confuse it with Guyana, and most people didn't even know where it was. You know, after the World Cup, after the economy turned around, everybody now knows where Ghana is. But there was time when it was impossible to have a conversation around Ghana. But now you have a very good chance of, there's so much has been said and done. So many people have come through here, and Ghana has a very good name, very good reputation. People have a soft spot for the country. That's what it is. And if they can give you a chance, they will. The important thing is when you get the chance, you don't mess it up for the next one.
All right. So that was a question about someone looking for opportunities outside of Ghana. So there's this other question from Koliki, who's looking at relocating back to Ghana. And I saw another question too along the same line. So I'm merging them. What would you say to people, Ghanaians, professionals working out there who are looking to come back to Ghana and do something, whether to join the financial sector in Ghana or to launch something of their own?
Definitely, you've taken I believe that the first decision you've taken is the right one. That is the decision to come back. And God knows Ghana needs help, so you need to come back. It's not easy. I have to tell you that I always jokingly tell my friends, when you're coming, buy a one-way ticket and rip up your passport, because as long as you see the return ticket lying around, you always feel tempted to jump on a plane and go back. So make sure you've come to stay. You probably want to definitely, and this is me plugging my day job here, you definitely want to have a house here before you come. It gives you that stability. You have a house, you have a car, you can then wait a lot of delays that you encounter in the Ghanaian system. If at that time too you are living with your parents or living with, then every day feels like a month. And that's why people after a while just throw it in. And if you can make sure that you've sorted yourself out accommodation-wise in your own name, you're permanently based here, you got.
Hello, Kojo.
And there were so many false dawns, so many promises, so many rejections, so many yes, we'll do it, no, we won't. But the reality is, because we were all kind of, it takes 6 months or 9 months or a year happened. Otherwise, you just kind of give in and go back. So I'm the place. You can wait out the conversation to 30 minutes, but Ghana says you that I have no doubt about. No doubt. Eventually, you get your lucky break. It's just that you must wait it out. Yeah.
Okay. So there are a few network challenges there, but one thing I got from that for sure is that once you want to come back home, contact First National Bank. Let them help you secure home financing so you can get a home in Ghana. And based on that springboard, you go on to do the great things that you want to do in Ghana. It might get tough, but don't give up, because after some time, it definitely should work out. So that's what I have from what you shared.
No, that's true.
There are more questions here. So there's one from Philip. He says we'd like to know whether you are willing to work with a fintech startup to deploy non-traditional, innovative lending products at scale.
Yes, certainly. You should reach out to me. put him in touch with the team that looks at that particular aspect of the business.
Okay.
And if there's something that we can collaborate on, why not? Yeah.
Awesome. So I mean, so I can just mention that your email is on the screen, and
Yes.
yes, go for it. All right. So another person here. Just a moment. So how did you access credits for your borrowers, and what was your average NPL?
Okay. How did we access credit?
Yes. Sorry, no. How did you assess the credit risk of your borrowers? Yes,
right.
The credit risk of your borrowers, and what is your average NPL?
Right. That's
NPL is non-performing loans. That's for all of us.
Right. So, no, great question. So, I mean, I listed reasons that people gave us about why the business would not work, and that was one of them. People said, well, in Ghana, we don't have a credit reference bureau. I mean, they came subsequent, but at the time, they didn't exist. So how are you going to know how to lend to these people? We had our own in-house model, very simple but effective in terms of looking at the individual, how much they earn, how much we can see they've borrowed from the information we glean from their bank statements, from their employer pay slips. That's another difficulty, getting pay slips. But I mean, there are ways of doing it, and we had a whole credit underwriting department that worked through these applications. So along the way, credit bureaus came along, and then it was easier to get that bit of information as well. You have to also accept that when credit bureaus came along for the first few years, the data had a lot of noise in there, so we had to take that into account. But it was all homegrown, and with the more we did it, the better we got at it. Those who applied from offshore, it was easier to assess them because in most of the countries they were applying from, they had credit bureaus. So we run the report or ask them to run the report and then take a look at what they owe and then build a credit profile from there. Otherwise, it's a straight income expense analysis. So NPLs have never really gone seriously above, never gone double digits. This is when banking system NPLs were averaging 20, 17, 18, 20%. We're always single digit, and it was below 5. Occasionally, when the city depreciates, it would go above 5. But if you had to average out our entire existence, I would say about 4 or 5%, which in this market isn't bad at all, given that most of it is dollar lending, and most of it has happened over a period where the dollar has gone from almost 1-to-1 to 6-to-1. So a lot has happened over the period, but the portfolio has generally held steady.
All right, thank you very much, Kojo. So by way of information to our participants, we'll give you the opportunity to raise your hand, unmute, and then ask questions. But there are some ground rules to that I would want you to know. The first thing is, please make sure your connection is stable. I mean, it's been stable throughout, so you wouldn't call and then we have problems hearing you. The other thing is, please make sure you are joining from a quiet environment. We don't want to have all the noise in the background going on. So if you are watching or if you are joining us from maybe the lorry station right now, I'd rather recommend you type out your question, and just as I've done so far, I'll be glad to read it out for you. We still have quite a number of interesting questions over here, but in 3 minutes time, I'll give you the opportunity to also speak so Kojo hears your voice too. Kojo, there's this question about your bank. I want to know, why do you have so few branches? And this is coming from someone who's done sales extensively in the financial sector. He feels you're not having enough branches might be a limitation.
So I think it's a function of two things. It's a function of our evolution. I mean, both entities that came together through the merger are relatively new. And if we're going to have branches at all. You don't roll them all out day one. So it's a function of where we are in our life cycle. But it's also fair to say, even the banks that have branches, I'm sure some of them wish they didn't have as many branches as they do, because if we're to do a survey on this platform, most people would agree that they probably haven't entered their branch in a very long time. And that's just a nature of where it's a sign of things to come. You have your banking app, you've got the ATM, you got the online banking internet portal. You rarely, unless it's something that requires moving large amounts, we have deposit taking ATM. So even the reason to go into a bank, and another thing has been taken away. So you think long and hard before you drop a branch these days, or you roll out a branch these days. From the customer point of view, it's lovely to see a branch on every street corner. But from the bank's point of view, it's a strategy that a lot of banks are being forced to review. So we have to find the median between just enough branches to make our customers comfortable, but not too many that it becomes a cost center.
Okay. Well, one thing, as an observer myself, one thing I can say for sure is that FNB has pushed their digital platforms, a lot of marketing around that. So I believe it's a clear indication of what your strategy is when it comes to how you reach your clients. There's this question from Ben. It says, cooperative housing is gaining ground in Ghana. Has your bank had any experience of supporting cooperatives in that respect?
No, we haven't. We haven't. We haven't done anything in that respect. We've looked at some people have sent us proposals, but they haven't really come through themselves. Happy if he has something up his sleeves, happy to look at it. To the extent that it has to do with housing, home acquisition, anything in that space, always happy to take a look. It doesn't mean we can always be of help, but always happy to take a look and see how we can collaborate. Even if we can't do anything about it, we have so many different partners we can send them off to.
Okay. So this question from Peter Kwabwa. Peter wants to know, so if you're having a conversation with your younger self right now, given all that you know and your experience, what would that advice be?
So let me just say hello to Peter. He's a great guy. You should find him. He has a wealth of talent to share.
Awesome.
Awesome guy. Conversation with my younger self. I think I'll probably set slightly more challenging goals for myself, and maybe put in a lot more effort in the earlier years, because you look back and sometimes you wonder where all the years have gone. I mean, definitely, even if I look at the GHL story, I probably, looking back, we could have done maybe 10 times what we did. I mean, I know we did a fair bit, but along the way, if I look at everything other than I did, because a couple of years ago, I sat in a presentation and they were talking about the exponential nature of things. I mean, that's the buzzword now, exponential growth. And I look back and I think I probably missed a couple of tricks on that one. But definitely, yeah, putting in a lot more work, and always, whatever opportunity you get, draw an exponential graph and say, listen, don't think 1, 2, 3, 4, think 1, 2, 4, 8. Because if you're not going on that track, you're probably dying.
All right.
Hi, Peter.
The exponential nature of things.
Yeah.
Right. I think
whatever opportunity you have,
yeah,
think exponential. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's something for all of us to read on, I believe. So this question also, what would you say is the best way for young entrepreneurs to obtain loans and capital from bank institutions in Ghana to start their businesses? So they start or grow their businesses, I should add.
Right. So let me say something very controversial. Even before you have a bank, if you look in your network, in your circle of friends, families, people you consider as mentors, you find for whatever business idea you have, I guarantee you, I promise you, there are people who can give you money to implement it the way you like, and it might come to, it might come with conditions, but I can guarantee you, there are people who happily give you the money. The problem is, how do you demonstrate that you're credible, and how do you not disappoint them? Everybody generally gets a couple of lucky breaks. I mean, think of the number of people who tell you, oh, I've got this thing, give me 5 CDs, I'll bring it back to you, and you never hear from them again. You know, that's a lost opportunity right there. Next time, don't even bother going back to that person. You know, I think if you draw a list of people you know, people that you worked with, people, and you come up with a solid business plan, I guarantee you, you'll find the money. That's even before you get to the banks, who, by the way, don't do equity. They will give you debt, and they will give you debt if your business is already at some stage of operation. But you'll find that there are always people who look at T-bill rates, are not terribly excited, and are looking for something slightly more exciting. So if you can prove to them that you will stay up at night, do the work, put the hours in, you will find that money amongst your circle. I know people might not believe that and think I'm probably speaking under the influence of something, but I can guarantee you that's really the case. You find that there are people you don't even know. If the business idea makes sense, and you're happy to say, listen, I'm dedicating my
Hello. All right, I think we are having challenges with Kojo's network, but I believe you'll sort that out soon. Just to
you find money, you always will. If that doesn't work, then your private equity, I firmly believe in what I just said.
Okay, yes, I think.
Have you lost you?
Well, I got a hang of what you said. So first thing, we should look within our network, look at people. If you can convince them that you're going to put in the work to make sure they are getting a better return than maybe the treasury bill or something else, they'll consider you. And another thing we can consider is private equity, which is another option to look at. And to be honest, if it wasn't for what we do, or I mean, some of the things I know, I would have thought, well, maybe this is some guy from some big family and he thinks all of us are from a big family. But I mean, I can say for sure, yes, there are people out there looking for opportunities like that. Thanks, Kojo, for sharing this. So this also segues nicely into...
Can I make an additional point to that?
Yes, please do.
There's a state of mind. There's a certain notion that when people invest in your business, it's charity. And I think if you don't get positive response, it's because you're making it sound like they are giving you money for free. I don't know if that makes sense. You need to demonstrate to them that, listen, give me 5,000, I'll give you back 12,000. I'll give you back over a year, and this is how I'm going to give it back. Everybody gets that. And to the extent that you can prove to them how it's going to work, you'll find money. I often get approached by people who say, well, I need to start a business. Can I come for 5K? Can I come for 10K? And the question is, well, yeah, I'll give it to you, but how do I see my money back? You know, I'm not in the business of giving out 5 and 10Ks. Prove to me that you'll use it to work. You will make your money. You pay me back. So the next person who comes, I can also give it to them. But normally, money goes and they start giving you excuses. That's why people might not experience what I'm saying. Otherwise, that's how most businesses are started, friends and family.
Yeah. All right, I think. Okay. All right. So I was saying, so this dovetails nicely into another question somebody asked, and this might be a little detailed, but he wants to know, so how did you structure your business plan to be able to attract the kind of funds you got? I know we might need a whole presentation for that, but in summary, can give us a snapshot of what your business plans look like. How did you structure them?
So let me make a confession. I mean, I recently saw a copy of the business plan, and I kind of laughed because even I would have scratched my head and wondered if somebody put that business plan in front of me. But the important thing is it had all the essential ingredients. It identified the problem. Ghana had a housing situation. It identified where the supply coming from, as constrained as it is. It identified the demand dynamics. And it was a very simple business plan which says there's a housing shortage, people struggling to buy their houses. If you're looking to buy a house, I'm going back into the late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, if you had to buy a house then, you went up and paid them 30% or 40% upfront, and the rest you paid over a year, 30, 40, or whatever payment scheme they gave you. And that's clearly untenable, and everybody kind of understands that. So even without getting into the details of it, immediately people realize here's something they can work with. It helped that the macroeconomic conditions at the time were benign. I mean, think back to the early 2000s, we weren't doing terribly great, but at least the economy was stable and everything was pointing in the right direction for the country. So on the back of that, the investors themselves engaged and worked with us through the details of, it's almost like interactive. It's unlikely you a business plan which answers all the questions, but to be able to set it out in a way which says, here's the problem, here's a solution, here's a high level set of financials which says we can address it this way or that way. You get a conversation going, and normally they also have people on their side who can analyze the numbers. And once they see an opportunity, they see it. So they engage at that point and they work with you. And that's what happened to us.
All right. Okay, so there's this other question. This one is from Vincent. So it says, in your view as an industry player, do real estate agents play any significant role in the mortgage business? How do they contribute in advancing the mortgage business in Ghana? He happens to be a real estate agent, so he's speaking for himself and his people.
Yeah, real estate agents play a key role. Unfortunately, because most of them aren't branded, they're almost like an invisible hand in the equation. So one way or the other, somebody's looking to buy a house, they go through an agent. Most people have their own private agent. They see when they need to buy something. So they call their agent up. He tells them what's going on. And through that way, the transaction comes to us. Since we started, we've seen a steady growth in the number of registered and properly constituted real estate agencies that you can, have a branding and as you can identify as such. But besides those, there are hundreds of people who work in the informal area of that business. But whether formal or informal, a lot of business comes to us through those channels, especially in the secondary market, where people have, people who own houses are looking to sell and engage an agent to sell for them. The buyer, if they need funding, normally ends up at our end by way of the agent. So, as I said, they are almost invisible. Nobody often talks about them. All that is set to change because regulation is currently going through Parliament to regulate what they do and kind of make it more streamlined. But no, they're very integral part of what we do. Yeah.
So are you by this advising Vincent and other real estate agents to take that extra step to properly brand themselves, formalize their business, and then put themselves out there?
Well, yeah, I mean, that makes them more visible. It might not be his business model, so I mean, I don't want him to do something he doesn't want to do. But if he takes a long-term plan of the business, then I think it's money well spent to make yourself visible, so that we can engage with you properly. Because we do have, in fact, we have a whole platform for estate agents, because we send properties we are looking to sell in the foreclosure space through them to their buyers. Yeah, so so the more visible you are, the better.
All right. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to give you the the opportunity as participants to unmute and ask your questions. We have space for about 5 questions. Please don't spend more than 45 seconds asking your questions. Let's be brief, be concise, but let it be related to what we are discussing. So if I see any hands up, I'm going to call you or give you the opportunity. While we are doing that, so could you, on the lighter side, what do you do for fun?
Unfortunately, I really don't have so much time on my hands. As I said, I spent a fair bit of time listening to radio. I follow current affairs as much as I can. I do drive around, a bit of local tourism. I do what I call my non-work work, other interests that also need a bit of attention. But usually by the time I leave the office, I'm pretty much so exhausted. There's very little time left to do anything on a regular basis. But I catch up with friends. I'm yet to adopt a full-time sport. So if anybody has suggestions, I'm happy to hear them.
Of course, I'll definitely recommend tennis. It's one passion I've picked up in the last year, and I believe you would love it. You mentioned something. Yes,
long tennis.
Long tennis. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Well, you mentioned something also that piqued my interest, and I think the other prince, as you mentioned, Prince Henry Dankwa, who is the co-founder of investingh. You mentioned local tourism, and that's something that appeals to us. On that, do you want to expand on that a bit?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential in that space. I've got 1 or 2 ideas in that department. I haven't been able to develop them yet, but every time you drive around, it's very clear that there are a lot of spots in Ghana that have potential, even if not for foreign tourists, but for local, Ghanaians or people in the sub-region who are looking to spend a weekend here or a week or so. Yeah, so I spent a fair bit of time compiling those spots, and there are a couple of ideas I'm looking at. But I think it's, Ghana is a wonderful country, and the contrasts that you see as you drive around is very encouraging. And we pray that COVID blows away so that we can get back to.
Definitely. So we can see our beautiful country, Ghana. Jessica, yeah. I see your hand is up. So please unmute and ask your question.
Hello, good evening, Kojo.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Mine is not really a question. It's is more. Are your slides going to be available to us?
Yes, happy to share. Yeah.
So how do we get a hold of them? Do we just email you, or?
I will pass them through to Prince, Dagadu,
yes.
And
yes. So Jessica, once you registered through the website, we have access to your information, and we are able to share all the necessary info with you. So once Kojo makes the slides available, we're going to share it to you via email. This presentation or this video is also available on our YouTube channel, investingh on YouTube, so you can get to just listen to this conversation again like you would a podcast or a radio show. Since Kojo is an avid listener of radio, you get to enjoy it as well. But thanks for.
Yes. And then Kojo, for you were asking about a sport, so I would recommend football. If the 11-a-side is too difficult, then start with 5-a-side.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that. Yeah. Okay. So tennis, football. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you very
much. Jessica.
All right. So, by way of information to our participants, the first few people to join this webinar will get some prizes, right? And those who ask questions too. So, Jessica, you already have a prize, and that will be communicated by the time we end this. Mucha, I see your hand is up. Please ask your question. Yes.
Yeah, hello, good evening.
Good evening, Mucha.
Nice to be part of this team. I think I was the person who was asking with regards to some international opportunities.
Yes, yes,
I
I
think
remember.
that if our we can get some links and possibly share more details into how we can go about it, because I know the international market is quite different in terms of opportunities as compared to Ghana. I think that our presenter Kojo has done some good experiences with regards to that. So if you can share much light in that, I will be very, very grateful. That's what I have.
Okay, thank you very much, Muta. Kojo, it appears he needs more details than what you provided initially.
Yes, so we can engage offline, and I get a better understanding of which area he's looking to get into. And even on this call, I see a lot of my old friends and people who can probably give pointers and help him on his way. So let's pick it up offline if that's all right.
All right. Yeah. So I think at the end of this, you would want to share your last slide, which has your email, so people can take it and touch base with you as well.
I'll do that.
I see Gordon is on. Gordon, please kindly unmute and proceed.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Prince, and thank you, Kojo. My question to Kojo will be on starting a real estate business in the area of acquiring lands for investment property. So you have the land, you are going to own the lands for some time, and then when the value appreciates, then maybe you want to dispose them. In doing such a business, what are some of the things that you want to consider based on your experience in the real estate sector? Thank you.
Thanks, Gordon. I think it's an interesting business model to acquire land, hold it, hopefully develop it to some extent, and then sell it at some point in the future. And it should work because, I mean, as they always say, land, we're not making new land. So the only land we have is what's already available. And as the population grows, the demand for land will just keep growing. So on the plus side, the future, the numbers, everything is in your favor. The slight challenge you find in Ghana is holding land for any appreciable length of time. Invariably, people start laying claim to the land, no matter what documents you have. And we've seen land title certificates being canceled in court. All of a sudden, somebody remembers some case that happened in 1744 and will trace back to it and swear the land belongs to some other family. And they'll go to court and they can make your life quite miserable. So if you're going to do it, it must be on parcels of land where you have like solid control. And even I don't know what that means. That's one. And secondly, to the extent that you can wall it, because the physical entry to if people just see bare land there, it's very tempting for them to just start digging the ground and start building a house or something. But if you've walled it, then it kind of discourages them from doing that. That also means money, right? So earlier I glossed over the kind of the difficulties estate developers go through. It is not easy at all, holding your own when people are encroaching, land guards are fighting you left, right, center, and you still have to, build and fight these characters at the same time. It's not a joke. So if you are going to acquire the land and just let it fallow, then I think you might find you become a target for some of these people. It's funny, I was speaking to an old friend of mine in the States yesterday, and they were making exactly the same point, that they wanted to develop a business model where they acquire land and wait for the price to appreciate. And I gave them that same advice, that you better have you have to almost live on the land to make sure that nobody comes on it. Invariably, somebody will try to take it, unless it's in the middle of nowhere, in which case then maybe that the potential to appreciate too is quite remote.
Quite literally, very remote. All right. Your points about walling the land. So this is not necessarily for estate developers, but even for people building for their own or getting land for their own residential purposes. What do you think about the option of growing trees on it if you can't, wall it because of the cost?
I don't think You see, first off, by the time the trees grow, any encroacher who really means to do business would already be on the land, and they can quite happily come and chop the trees. I mean, even walls are demolished. That takes a bit more effort. But if it's just land without, it's almost like a sliding scale, right? The worst thing is to have land, no barrier. But if you've got if you've got trees, not bad, even though, as I said, trees take like 2-3 years to come out of the ground, by which time, if the land is in any decent location, somebody would have made their move. And then if you can do a wall, all the better. I mean, to acquire land, I think you definitely have to wall and register title and still pay close attention to the land. And that's what, especially Accra, has become these days.
So it's also helps to live in it.
Right, exactly. Even then, if you read the papers, you hear about encounters where people go on the land and pretend it's theirs. So I'm not saying Accra is the Wild West, but anybody who's bought land in any of these areas knows what I'm talking about. There's always somebody who wants to move in. So wall it, and as you said, have someone live on it. But if it's on a large scale, then you really have a fight on your hands.
All right. Albert Kito, you are up next. Kindly unmute and ask your question.
Hi, everyone. As my name was mentioned, Albert Kito. I just wanted to check something with Kojo. In your presentation, you did mention of like mortgaging as part of your presentation. Myself and a few guys were thinking of this affordable housing projects, but our concern was how people are going to finance the project, because obviously we know the addressing system in Ghana and trying to get the credit rating of people to give the right sort of investment to it is very difficult. What would your advice be to us as very young investors?
So just to clarify, are you looking to build affordable houses? Is that?
Yes, we're looking at building affordable houses with some investors in Ghana, but obviously when we build the properties, we will have to sell them, and we need to know the right model to be able to get the property sold.
Yeah. So first off, my advice would be define what you mean by affordable housing in terms of price and quality and location, because unfortunately that expression has been used in all kinds of contexts these days. So it's quite difficult to nail down the definition. That's one. But once assuming you've got the right location, the right product offering, and you got all your investors lined up and you're building, in terms of the purchasing, to the extent that, as I said, everything is in order, the buyers will come. I don't have any doubt about that. And you'll find, if it's truly affordable, most of the buyers will actually pay cash, because I'll be the first to admit, for every project, the mortgage financing component is normally 30-40%, if even. The rest are cash buyers. There is a fair bit of liquidity in the system, and that's just the way it's been. So you find a lot of people come look at it. If they like it, they give a payment plan and pay cash to get the units. But the concern I have relate to the earlier points: location, the kind of design, the kind of finish, and the pricing you put on the units. Because normally people start off saying they're building affordable housing, and by the time they are done, the units are nowhere near affordable. Or if they're affordable, then they don't look very appealing as homes. So that would be my caution. If you get those right, the buying, I don't think you have a problem, because the demand is there. I don't know if that answers your question. And those who need funding we can provide them financing to acquire. So that side is, that's why we are there. We'll take care of that side. But your real problem is getting the right units in the right area. Yep.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to take my last question. But before that, a few reminders. So we dropped a link to our WhatsApp group. We have these WhatsApp groups, and the purpose of this WhatsApp group is to keep you updated on our webinars, to send you links and material from Invest in Ghana, including newsletters. There's a lot of good financial material that you get to benefit from, and that constant reminder to visit our YouTube and consume all the previous content that we've posted there. Awesome webinars about mutual funds, about investing, real estate, cryptocurrency, and the like. So please, if you are not in one of our groups already, follow that link and join the Invest in GH family. My last question will come from Peter Akwabwa. I mean, Kojo mentioned him, so why not? Peter, please unmute and proceed.
Kojo, thanks so much. And Kojo, how are you? I hope you're well.
Very well, thanks, Peter. Yourself?
Thank you. No, I'm okay. Look, my question is really around the current market environment, as well as understanding the current market environment, the opportunities there, and also with the whole free trade discussions, do you see an opportunity to go more regional, or is this more going to be saturated in Ghana, concentrated in Ghana?
Are you asking if our business will go regional?
Yeah, more towards Africa, or you think you're going to just stabilize just in Ghana?
I think it's the latter. We'll probably just focus on Ghana. Even in the earlier GHL days, we often had that conversation. Do we go cross-border, or do we do more in Ghana? And the view was that there's so much to be done in Ghana that, we probably would, we need to consolidate our base here first. I mean, we haven't even begun as far as the numbers we are looking at are concerned. So we see the opportunities cross-border, but, we also see kind of difficulties there unless you really have a wonderful partner to work with. So we are happy kind of doing more here, and we know there's a lot more to be done. Probably stay here for a while. Yeah.
Thank you, and keep doing a good job. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. We'll catch up later.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So I have a quick follow-up to Peter's question, though. I mean, given your merger with First National Bank, wouldn't you look at doing same in other countries where First National has presence?
Well, I mean, we don't have if we had businesses in those countries, then yes, those businesses would have merged with, I guess, First National in those countries, but we don't have a presence there yet. So. Okay.
All right. So it's not as though you've merged with the First Rand Group. You only merged with First National Ghana. So the focus still remains Ghana.
Yeah, it's a local business. Yeah.
Okay. So I have a last question, which is a rather controversial one. So a lot of people attribute the high real estate prices in Ghana to dubious money. Yes, just so I don't mention what exactly that means. People have talked about drug money. People have talked about money laundering and all sorts of things. So what's your take on this view, given that you've been in this industry for a decade or more?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard those comments too. I hate to make statements when I don't have evidence to back it up. But yeah, I mean, if we're having this conversation in a bar somewhere and you ask me that same question again, I'll probably kind of nod and agree that, yeah, sometimes you see transactions that make you scratch your head and wonder how quickly some of these units come up and how quickly they get bought out completely, as in sold out. So sometimes you do get a sense, and I've said as much. I've said that normally for each developer that puts out units, we don't do more than 30-40% as mortgage financiers, and probably speak for the other mortgage operators in the country. A lot of the transactions are cash buys, so there is a lot of liquidity in the system. Thankfully, we have experts at BOG to track where the money is coming from and where it's going. But I mean, yeah, sometimes you do see things that make you wonder, but there are also very good businesses in town and people making really good money. So that kind of probably explains a lot of it. But yeah.
All right. A very good way of going around that question. Maybe we'll link up in the bar sometime, and then I'll get the expanded version of your answer to this question.
You buy the drink.
Sorry?
So you buy the first drink.
No worries. I mean, for an answer to this question, I mean, I'm ready to buy that ring because look, this question has got me scratching my head for a long time. So why not? Game on. All right, Kojo, thank you very much. Thanks. And I speak not only for myself, but on behalf of the co-founders and organizers of this webinar series. That has been a very wonderful conversation with you. We've got a lot of great insight, and I believe the listeners or participants of this webinar will definitely agree. In fact, others who would watch this on YouTube later would have the same view, and we are grateful for your time. Do you have any parting words for us?
I'm listening.
Hi, Kojo. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you.
Yes, yes. Any concluding words before we close? We are about closing.
Well, I think I would just like to say that once again, thank you very much for the opportunity. I've had a wonderful time, wonderful audience, amazing questions. I'm looking forward to the next time. For those outside the country looking for a way to get back in, to the extent that they want to engage and have conversations around anything I said, happy to engage. Entrepreneurial route, happy to have interactions with them, share the little experience I have. And I guess for those also looking to buy property or have questions around the whole how to acquire property using the home loans, I mean, that's a topic of another conversation. But before then, if they want to engage or they have burning issues that need addressed, my details are up. And I think, as you said, I'll probably have to share my screen again so the email address comes up. There it is. I don't know is it visible? You can see it? Right. So you can either send it to my private email address or send it to Ghana Home Loans at First National Bank. Either way, I'll get to see it, and then we can pick it up from there.
All right.
Thanks.
So,
wonderful evening. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kojo. In my private mail right now, I see someone who already has a proposal for you. He's looking at some great prospects in Tamale. I've asked the guy to send an email to you. So, I mean, I think FNB would benefit a lot from this webinar as well. We are grateful to you once again for joining. It's been a pleasure. And to everybody who joined, we say thank you very much. God bless you. My name is Prince Dagadu, the Regal MC, and it's been a pleasure doing this. I count it as so much of a privilege, and I'm grateful to the organizers. God bless you, and thank you for joining. Have a good night or a good day wherever you are. Thanks.
Thank you.